Are there any ideas out there that could solve the Israel-Palestine issue in our days? Check out this clip from former ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, talking about his new book, One Jewish State. And he goes through, in the book, some of the biblical and religious approaches and some of even the secular approaches, why it makes sense to have one Jewish state. So check out this clip. Before we do, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. Not going to want to miss this. Check this out.
One Jewish state. I want to hear more about this because I know that it's a book with all of your ideas for how we can pave peace for the Middle East, for America, something that will be good to bridge the Arab world, the entire world, and America. Was this written in response to October 7th? How did you decide that you need to write this book with a very provocative title, which we'll get to, One Jewish State?
Well, I decided to write it after October 7th, but not because of what happened on October 7th, but what happened in the aftermath of October 7th, where, after this, unspeakable assault on the Jewish people, the worst since the Holocaust, that was then supported in numerous polls by like more than 80% of Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria. My government, or the American government, decided that the best solution for this would be a two-state solution, would be to take the land that God gave to the Jewish people, some of the most holy, biblically significant land on the planet, and to give that to people who support what happened on October 7th, and people who want nothing more than to destroy the Jewish legacy within the land of Israel. So I said, all right, I can yell and scream that I don't support a two-state solution, but then if you don't have a then what,
right?
The conversation just you just create a vacuum, and vacuums in this part of the world did not get filled well. Yeah. When Israel left Lebanon, it got filled by Hezbollah. When Israel left Gaza, it got filled by Hamas. When Israel left the Sinai, ISIS started moving in. Whenever Israel creates a vacuum, pulls back, bad things happen. So the question is, what's the then what? And part of the point I make is, look, it's sort of my frustration saying to the world, there's more than 40 Muslim states, right? 40 Muslim states where in most of those states, if you're not a Muslim, you really are not going to lead a very comfortable life. There are a few that are more advanced, like the Emirates and Saudis, where you have expats that live there that, do okay. But 40 of them, they're Muslim states. That's the official religion is being Muslim. If you're not a Muslim, you really have no business being there. Yeah. There's, I don't know, a good number of Christian states, a good number of Hindu states, Buddhist states. Mm-hmm. And we have the Church of England. I mean, the country that, America came from has a national church. Why can't there just be one Jewish state? Just one. Mm-hmm. There's never going to be two. I promise you, we'll never ask for a second one. We just want that one Jewish state on the land, which no people has a more compelling historic claim to any piece of land anywhere in the world than the Jewish people to the land of Israel. We just want that one place. It's the size of New Jersey. Like, what is the world so obsessed with just having this one Jewish state? And that's sort of the motivation. Now, that's not an argument. Yeah. That's a frustration. Mm-hmm. But that's the frustration that got me writing the book. And then I make the argument, and I think this is what's unique about this book. It's not right-wing. It's not left-wing. We have sort of a motto: not right, not left, just smart. Mm-hmm. You could be a person of deep faith, and that's your North Star. Yeah. And you can say, well, we like this because the Jewish people will retain every inch of their biblical homeland. You could be an atheist and say, look, I just care about, the economy and national security. And this works because this will result in Israel, which is the only democracy in the Middle East and the only successfully run nation in the region, having, control over a minority population, which it's proven the ability, to empower, inside the Green Line, the Arab population. And I go through a whole, section there about how, 20%, the Arabs are about 20% of the Israeli population. More than 20% of all the leading universities in Israel have Arab students. I mean, more than 20% of the students are Arabs. So Arabs have, they live in Israel. They don't want to go anywhere else. Yeah. You go to, we're not far now from Baqa al-Gharbiya or Faham, right? These are entirely Arab cities. Right. You go to them and say, look, guys, if you want, you want to live, you want to be part of Area A or Area B, we'll redraw the line. 90% would say, over my dead body, we're Israelis, we're not leaving. So Israel, and it doesn't get enough credit for it, right? How it treats its minority population. Right. So if you just care about, the economy, you care about security, it makes sense for Israel to have sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. If you just care about the Jews, it's great for the Jews. You just care about the Palestinians, if that's all you care about. I want the Palestinians to lead better lives. It's great for them as well. So the whole point of the book is that no matter how you slice it, and what Mike Pompeo says in the foreword, which I think is, very prescient, he says, why should any of us be surprised that fulfilling God's will is actually the path that brings the most good to the most people?
Incredible.
And that's what this book is about. It's a long book. I mean, it's not that long. It's 240 pages, but so we tackle it from arguments about faith, arguments about the economy, about security, about the Arab world. We have a section about how important the evangelical Christian support is for this. But it ultimately, what it does is you have all these different vectors, and you go through them. But at the end of the day, they all lead to the same place.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about the time in which we're living is before October 7th, there was the world of faith. There was the world of national security. There was the world of, economics. There was the world of geopolitics, right? You have all these different worlds. And people within who really, cared about their particular vector, they had their own views. And these views tended to be, not reconcilable. Now, post-October 7th, the world of faith, the world of economics, national security, it's all heading in the same direction. And it's all heading in this direction. And that's what this book is trying to advance.
And that's absolutely right. And so from either way you slice it, whether we're talking about the biblical model, which he goes into, he talks about Judea and Samaria. Judea and Samaria are now the so-called West Bank. That's how they're referred to sort of distance them from their Jewish connection, even though Jews are called Jews because of Judea, their connection to Judea, because all of the stories that from the Bible, when Abraham comes to Israel and Isaac and Jacob, they lived in the Judea and Samaria region. A lot of the stories that about events that took place in the land of Israel took place in that region. So whether you are coming from a biblical standpoint and saying that the Jewish people should have this area of land from a biblical standpoint, or whether you're talking about just a national security, the national security aspect, that any time the Jewish people give back land in exchange for an attempted peace, it never winds up in a good way for Israel. And if they give up the West Bank, the Judea and Samaria region, that it makes Israel about this big and makes it much more subjected to its enemies. And so whatever perspective you're coming from, maintaining Israel's sovereignty over Judea and Samaria is something that's extraordinarily important. And kudos to David Friedman, former ambassador to Israel, in creating a book that goes not only from, it's not a right-wing book or a left-wing book, it's a smart book, as he lays out, that goes through. These are the reasons, these are the arguments, and for whatever your perspective you're coming from, all roads lead to one land of Israel. I did like his quote from Mike Pompeo that said, who would have thought that following in the ways of God would bring the most good to the most amount of people, for the Israelis, for the Palestinians, for indeed the rest of the world in that region. If you like this content overall, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.